Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily update for November 3rd, 2021. I'm going to be talking about the ghouls on parade at the COP26 conference, pushing their lies and false assumptions, and also about the striking defeat of the Democrats in Virginia and whether they eke out a victory in New Jersey. The fact that it was so close shows that they'd better develop a new strategy if they intend to maintain their offices. But let's start with the COP26, because what we saw yesterday was an example of the Mother Earth cult gone wild. The attempt to push the line that the science is settled, everyone knows that CO2 is the greatest threat, and therefore the leap of faith that the way to address this is to cut off fossil fuels, cut off the use of most of the energy which is needed to maintain an industrial economy, and to shift instead into speculation on carbon futures, that somehow this is going to address the problems facing mankind. What we're seeing is the commitment of these psychopaths to end the potential for the fruits of modern science and technology to sustain the population. And not only to ruin the standard of living in the advanced sector, but to impose a new form of what one president called carbon colonialism on the developing sector. Now, the revolt against this atrocity is continuing. Yesterday, we reported on the comments of the president of Uganda and the president of Nigeria, both of whom said, we want development, and development is not possible with so-called sustainable energy sources. The Nigerian president explicitly said Nigeria will increase its use of coal and nuclear power. Yesterday, President Arce of Bolivia used the term the new carbon colonialism to describe the policy of the wealthy nations using the CO2 mandates to essentially shut down the economies of the poorer countries in return for a few crumbs off the table. Now, the problem is that what Arce and others who are opposing this carbon colonialism are offering is some form of shared future. As he said, we have to live together in harmony with Mother Earth. So they're accepting the terms of the Gaia cult, the idea that we have a limited world and we're plundering it and we have to stop that and go into some form of sharing or redistribution. That cannot work. That's not going to develop the poorer countries. It's in the realm of real science that the solutions lie. And real science is based on the advancements made in the individual creative human mind. And that we can offer developments, we can come up with new ideas, with solutions to reject the depopulation policies that are presented by the limits to growth ghouls. They apparently truly believe that we live on a planet, as Prince Charles said yesterday, of finite resources. Well, the history of human civilization shows that resources are not finite. They depend on the level of science and technology that is prevalent within any society. If you're a hunter and a gatherer, then the limit that you have is the low-hanging fruits and the naturally growing vegetables and animals dumb enough to allow you to catch them, to eat them. But those are the limits. So what did man have to do? Develop the cultivation of gardens, of nature, the domestication of livestock, to increase the animal protein and the vitamins and nutrients necessary to have a longer life expectancy. And with a longer life expectancy, you could have more time to develop the minds of the young so they can advance that process. That's the solution to so-called finite resources. Similarly, what's the solution to an energy crisis? Shut down the most efficient forms of electricity production ever developed by the human race? Of course not. Think of the implications of the development of nuclear fusion power. And there have been advances made repeatedly in the last years going in that direction that imply not only electricity production directly from the reactions, the nuclear reactions, but also the development of plasma processes, laser technologies, and so on that can be used in manufacturing, that can be used in producing new raw materials. These are the ways you solve the question of limited resources. So instead of funneling $60+ trillion into a green financial bubble, how about funding serious scientific research and development? And I don't mean research and development of the sort that Jonathan Swift satirized in Gulliver's Travels, where the learned men of the old society were trying to extract sunbeams from cucumbers. But advances in harnessing the potential that's there, for example, in atomic and subatomic particles. That's the potential we have for the future, which is being shut down now because supposedly that's the cause of global warming, that advances in science are causing global warming. Instead of turning budgetary policy over to financial predators, as the Great Reset would propose, that central banks take over the budgetary process as well as the credit process. First of all, let's acknowledge they've completely screwed up the credit process. They've created a hyperinflation by pumping huge volumes of liquidity into bankrupt corporations. Instead of directing it into the kinds of research and development and the kind of manufacturing and entrepreneurial enterprises which would increase the productivity of labor. So the Great Reset would give them more power to build financial bubbles. Instead of doing that, why not go with LaRouche's policies, the four laws, which would put a limit to bank speculation through Glass-Steagall, which would shut down bankrupt firms through bankruptcy reorganization. That's what it's there for. Would have a credit bank, a national bank modeled on that of Alexander Hamilton, which would increase the flow of credit to productive enterprises, and especially directed into research and development and infrastructure, but research and development in the advanced sciences, in space technology, nuclear fusion, and so on. Those are the solutions. Instead, what do we see? Well, we're seeing hyperinflation because of the pumping of money. We're seeing energy rationing on the horizon because if you don't put money into discovering new resources, the resources you have become more costly, especially when you have speculators who have pockets full of money that they can use to drive up the prices on spot markets, which is what's happening today with oil and gas prices. You have censorship. All of this adds to the polarization of society. Now, you want to see the result of this? Look at the Virginia elections and the New Jersey elections yesterday. The Democratic strategy in these elections was rely on the narrative that Trump is bad and that people don't like Trump, and all you have to do is accuse your opponent of being a Trump wannabe, and you'll win. Didn't work in Virginia, did it? Calling the Republican candidate Youngkins, calling him Trumpkins, didn't help Terry McAuliffe because Terry McAuliffe had nothing to fall back on except supporting Biden. And what's Biden's policy? It's falling apart. It's the Green New Deal. It's the Great Reset. It's continuing the policies of Barack Obama on health care, which didn't provide a penny to really help people who needed it the most. So if you rely on the media strategy of attacking Trump, and of course the media continues to do that, what's going to happen? Well, in Virginia, which Biden won by 10% in 2020, there was a 12% reversal as the Republicans won by 2%. In New Jersey, which was a slam dunk for Biden in 2020, the race with 84% of the vote in was 60 votes apart between the Republican and the Democrat, with over 2.5 million counted. So the Democratic incumbent, Murphy, in New Jersey, could lose. Now, what's the problem? They still live in the universe dominated by Trump, anti-Trump. And if you run a campaign saying we're not Trump, you're actually making Trump more popular given what people are facing in their day-to-day lives today. Hyperinflation, energy shortages, supply chain problems, and so on. Not all of these are caused by Biden, but Biden's the president. What's he doing about it? So unless the Democrats adopt a new strategy, they're sealing their own doom. But it's not their doom, it's your doom. And that's why it's so crucial that you get the LaRouche the four principle laws, economic laws, study them, and go out and campaign for them. Join us in our mobilization. And be sure to go to the schillerinstitute.com and register for the conference on November 13th and 14th, where we will be presenting the alternatives, the actual alternatives to the crises we face. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned the strategic crisis, which is extremely dangerous right now, given the anti-Russia, anti-China push from the same people who are trying to get you to accept energy austerity and cutbacks in your living standards. So we can do better, we will do better. Adopt the LaRouche approach, and we can change this country and the world as it needs to be. So thanks for joining me. I'll see you again tomorrow.